Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the story of one of the most evil dictators of the last century, Saddam Hussein. He was called the Butcher of Baghdad, and his regime was responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths. So this will be the full story of Saddam Hussein, one of the most notorious leaders of the last century. In this first part of the video, we will cover his early life, rise to power, and the beginning of his reign of terror. Saddam Hussein was born on April 28, 1937, in the village of Alajah, near Tikrit in northern Iraq. He came from a poor Sunni Arab family. His father, Shali, who was an illiterate farmer, disappeared before Saddam was born, so he never knew him. And his mother remarried and had 2 more children. So when Saddam was just 6 years old, he moved to live with his maternal grandfather. But his relationship with his mother was not good. She always told Saddam that he smelled bad because he washed himself with river water instead of using a bucket. And she even sent him out into the streets at night to beg for food. So basically, Saddam had a very difficult and unhappy childhood, marked by poverty and abuse from his stepfather. At the age of 10, he left home and went to live with his uncle, Karala Talfa, who was a strong supporter of Arab nationalism. His uncle basically adopted him and raised him like his own son. And Saddam would visit his mother only during religious holidays. One day, his mother asked for money, and Saddam gave her all the money that he had earned working in his uncle's carpentry shop. And his mother told him that she would pay him back with interest. But then Saddam went back to his mother's house to collect his money. But she refused to pay him back, telling him that she didn't owe him anything. And that is when Saddam decided that he was never going to return to his mother's house again. He completely dropped his maternal family, and he started calling his uncle's family his real family. Karala was one of the founders of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, which aimed to unite the Arab world through socialism. And Saddam adopted his uncle's political beliefs, which deeply influenced him throughout his life. When Saddam was 17, he tried to join the Iraqi army, but he was rejected because he was too young. So then he decided to run away to Syria to fight alongside the army against Israel. But after 2 weeks, he came back to Iraq because he missed his girlfriend. And it was at this point that Saddam realized that he needed to get a job and earn some money. So he started to work for the General Company for Water Electricity and got a job repairing electrical lines. It paid well, and he could save enough to buy weapons. Meanwhile, in 1957, the Ba'ath Party revolted against the government, but the revolt was quickly crushed, and Saddam, who was involved in the plot, went on the run. At this point, his girlfriend, who was now pregnant with his child, advised him to turn himself into the authorities to avoid further trouble. But Saddam did not listen and continued to escape until he reached Damascus, Syria, where he lived in exile for a year. During his time there, he met several members of the Ba'ath Party and participated in anti-Qassam activities. Then, in 1959, Saddam returned to Baghdad and was involved in an attempt to assassinate the Iraqi Prime Minister Abdul Karim Qasim. But the attempt failed and Saddam was wounded. He fled to Syria and later to Egypt, and while he was in Cairo, he married a cousin of his uncle's wife, a 16-year-old girl who bore him 2 sons. Then, in 1963, the Ba'athists returned to power in a new coup d'etat and made Saddam the Director General of the Iraqi Intelligence Services. However, they were soon overthrown by a military coup led by General Abdi al-Aziz Olubidy. And although Saddam was loyal to the party, he did not support the armed struggle against the new regime. But when the Ba'ath Party came to power again in 1968, the Revolutionary Command Council appointed him deputy president under Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr. The new regime immediately began to implement socialist policies, including the nationalization of banks, factories, and farms. But foreign policy was dominated by Saddam, who was obsessed with the idea of pan-Arabism, believing that Arabs should be united in one state. In 1971, he provoked a border conflict with Turkey to draw attention away from domestic issues. But he lost and had to withdraw Iraqi troops. In 1976, he attacked Iran over an island in the Shatt al-Arab waterway, but the war ended in a stalemate. Then, in 1979, Saddam forced President al-Bakr to resign. He was 65 years old and had been in power since 1968, and Saddam took full control as president of Iraq, chairman of the Revolutionary Command Council and commander of the armed forces. Now at this point, let me make a brief comment about Saddam's personality. Although he had a rather humble beginning, Saddam was a man with very big ambitions, and he wanted to transform Iraq into a great power that dominated the Middle East. He believed that Iraqis were superior to other Arabs, and he was obsessed with the idea of Pan-Arabism. He claimed to be an Arab nationalist, but in reality, he was a dictator who pursued his personal interests, and he used Arab nationalism as propaganda. Throughout his reign, he was known as the Butcher of Baghdad, and his regime was responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths. He ruled with an iron fist, using torture, executions, and a vast network of informants and secret police to spy on his people and eliminate any opponents. His secret police force was known as the Mukhabarat and was infamous for its brutality and efficiency. They would arrest people without charging them with a crime and often tortured prisoners to extract confessions or force them to confess to crimes they did not commit. And those who were accused of being enemies of the state were often executed or disappeared. The Mukhabarat also controlled the media and used it to spread propaganda and control public opinion. Journalists who published articles critical of the government were often arrested or killed. In the early years of his regime, Saddam attempted to improve Iraq's economy and infrastructure. And he did succeed in many ways, turning Iraq into a modern and industrialized country. But at the same time, he was waging wars on two fronts, against Iran and against his own people. In 1980, he launched a war against neighboring Iran, hoping to take advantage of the chaos that followed the Iranian Revolution. But the Iran-Iraq War lasted 8 years and caused over 1 million deaths. In the beginning, Iraq achieved some victories and retook the disputed territories. But then Iran counterattacked and pushed Iraqi troops out. In 1988, Saddam launched a chemical attack against Iranian troops using mustard gas and other chemical weapons. In that same year, he ordered another chemical attack against Kurdish civilians in northern Iraq in the town of Halabja. It is considered the worst chemical attack in history. The attack killed an estimated 5,000 people and injured over 7,000 others. In response to the attack, a group of Kurdish Peshmerga fighters entered Iraq from Iran and took over parts of the Kurdish region. Saddam responded by launching a major offensive called Operation NFL to crush the uprising. NFL means booty in Arabic, but instead of finding booty, Iraqi soldiers found gold. Many Kurdish villages contained little more than mud huts, goats, and sheep. So they stole everything they could carry and sometimes executed the villagers before looting their homes. Thousands of Kurdish men were taken to a nearby river and drowned, while women and children were thrown into the river and watched as Iraqi soldiers executed their parents. This led to the largest exodus of Kurds in history. Some 1.5 million fled to Iran and 1 million fled to Turkey. So at this point, you may wonder why nobody stopped Saddam Hussein. Why did he feel the need to invade Kuwait? Well, the answer lies in his obsession with Pan-Arabism. You see, Saddam claimed that Kuwait was historically part of Iraq, and in the 1960s, when the Kuwaiti government rejected attempts to unite the two states, he threatened war unless Kuwait accepted Iraqi sovereignty. But Kuwait refused, and the threat of war remained until 1990, when Iraq's economy was in decline and Saddam desperately needed money to fund his war with Iran. He decided to invade Kuwait. In August 1990, he gave Kuwait an ultimatum, demanding that they increase oil production to reduce global oil prices and compensate Iraq for the war with Iran. When Kuwait refused, Saddam ordered the Iraqi army to invade. But within 2 days, it was clear that Iraq had bitten off more than they could chew. A US-led coalition quickly defeated Iraqi forces and advanced toward Baghdad. Fearing a full-scale invasion of Iraq, Saddam ordered the execution of hundreds of posts to discourage his soldiers from surrendering. He thought that if the world saw how ruthless he was, no one would want to capture him alive. Then in 1991, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 687, which demanded that Iraq withdraw from Kuwait and threatened the use of force. This led to the Gulf War, which lasted 42 days. On February 28, 1991, American troops entered the country, and by March they had defeated Iraqi forces and retaken Kuwait. That same month, a ceasefire was declared, and Iraqi forces withdrew from Kuwait. Then in May, Saddam announced the end of the war and urged Iraqis to resist the Americans. But this led to a full-scale insurgency and civil war. Shiites in the south and Kurds in the north rose up against Saddam, but he crushed both rebellions. And in the following years, Iraq was placed under strict UN sanctions, which caused massive suffering among Iraqis, but allowed Saddam and his inner circle to maintain their wealth and power. But how did they do that? How did Saddam keep his power after losing the war? If you want to find out, then stay tuned for part 2 of the video. See you next time.